You're listening to Chicago Stories, a podcast from City Hall featuring the stories of everyday Chicagoans, as told to Mayor Emanuel.
Mayor Emanuel with Chicago Stories. We're joined by Miguel Cervantes, who plays Hamilton here in Chicago and is now a Chicagoan. Is that fair?
I agree with that statement 100%. We're loving it. And
an expat from Dallas.
I listen, Dallas by way of New York and Boston, and all of a sudden we find ourselves here in Chicago. And they don't tell me what the schedule of the show is. That's above my pay grade. But if I had my choice, we would stay. It would because we're really soaking the city right in. So.
The whole family.
Everybody. My son, he's starting first grade next year, and
where's he going?
Pulaski.
Oh, yeah.
Pulaski, and it's Pulaski over there.
He's got a great IB program there.
Yeah, he really loves it, and we really love it. We toyed around with private school and looking around at different options, and everyone we talked to about that school said it was great. So, and we're very, very happy. So it's
they have also a great language program.
Yeah, and if I had my way, I'd stick him into the Spanish immersion program over there. But he doesn't. He balks at it a little bit.
What happened to the Yiddish class that they were having?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Congratulations, then. So where do you guys live in the city?
Oh, we live in Bucktown.
Wonderful. Are you guys near the 606?
Yeah, my son just learned,
the biking.
Proud daddy. I just taught my son how to ride his bike, so we're going to go up there pretty soon. And, but he's still got full armor, the whole thing. But he's gonna.
Let me ask you a question. Did you have armor when you first learned how to bike?
Absolutely not.
No, you had a head and a skull, and that was your protective gear.
That was as much as we needed. And my dad just said, if you start to crash, aim to the grass. That's how it went.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, so for expat from Dallas here, what's the route you took to getting into theater? And I mean, I think I know a little of it, but what was the route and how did it was kind of parallel parked, if I'm not mistaken. Is that?
The route to sort of the theater career, I guess, was kind of
circuitous.
It went around the block a couple times. But when I was a kid in Dallas, I was the kid always jumped up in front of the class, wanted to read the poem or read the thing or sing the song. And my mom found out about this theater thing. I was never an actor kid. It was never anything. My dad was in a band and he sang, and but it was never part of my life. And it wasn't. And I wanted to be a teacher, play soccer. It was sort of my mom's a teacher. She just retired this year from Dallas.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, she's been grinding it out for a while. So that was sort of the idea that I had. And then my mom said, "Well, there's this theater thing. You might go try it out." And
where are you in your life here?
I was 11-year-old kid, 12 maybe, 6th grade, and found myself in this musical, Babes in Toyland, and I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. And then that sort of was the beginning of this journey. But still is just a little thing. And then all of a sudden I went to the Arts Magnet High School in Dallas from a friend of mine, said you should come, and became a dancer at the Arts Magnet High School.
Really?
Yeah, because I was a junior in high school, and you're not allowed to go into the high school as a junior. You usually have to go in as a freshman. They like to give you the whole 4-year immersion of this thing. So, but they needed guy dancers, and so I could move a little bit, and so I got in as a junior. And that's where the whole thing really kind of took off, because that's where I auditioned for college as an actor, musical theater, and they said, well,
Where'd you go to school?
Emerson College in Boston.
Yeah.
And they came to the senior show, and they said, hey, we'd love for you to come, and here's a lot of money.
We're short a soccer team.
Yeah, listen, and that's what I thought. Well, maybe do they have any sports? Do they have cross country or track or soccer? They said, yeah. But, as I was in high school, the sports and the practices took
I didn't
the
know we
back
shared
seat.
this, but so I had played soccer and picked up ballet in the off season.
Look at there. See this.
And I had a scholarship to the Joffrey Ballet School, and I didn't take it. So you get into theater, and your mom says, "Okay, we're going to apply to a kind of a magnet arts education in high school."
Yeah. Well, I didn't even know it was a thing.
Huh.
I didn't know the Arts Magnet was actually an option. It was never part of my thinking. It was just that. I did a show after my sophomore year, and my friend in the show with me, she said, oh, you can dance. You should come to my high school. I said, what high school is that? She said, the Arts Magnet downtown. I said, wait, what? And then so she brought me into the dance department, and I never liked it that much. I kind of liked it, but it wasn't something I was passionate about. The theater and the singing was more where I wanted to. So I ended up as a senior in the musical theater program, and that's where I auditioned for a musical theater program in college. And I didn't really know anything about it, but all these reps from NYU and Emerson, Carnegie Mellon, all these the schools that were the big dogs came there. And then Emerson, this guy just said, hey, we have some money. I was a pretty smart kid. I had pretty good grades, and he said,
Thank God for your mother.
I know. I don't know where I would have ended. I wanted to go to SMU and play soccer. I wanted to go to and then I ended up there, and then that sort of is where the real, theater life came in, and I thought, wow, this is actually a thing that people do. This is actually something that can lead to, some kind of success. Little did I know it's not that easy, but and being in Boston and being in the program, and then meeting people who had been on Broadway, and meeting people, and they
came up to Emerson.
Yeah, there were
like
some alumni who had been.
I see.
Our professors talked about people and knew people, and one of them had been on Broadway a couple times, and I thought, wow, it's amazing. They're on Broadway, and so then when I graduated, I went right to New York as the big fish in my school, and I got a lot of really cool. They had the Emerson Majestic Theater, was this old roadhouse that they had redone, and I thought, oh, this is great. This is easy. This is going to be awesome. Went to New York and crash and burn because I didn't. 22-year-old kid wasn't quite ready for the.
I don't think New York was ready for you. I wouldn't. Let's say that. Let's work on the answer.
I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah,
I'm going to revamp
your next
that
podcast
story.
with somebody. Yeah, New York wasn't ready. They hadn't seen Miguel yet.
They weren't quite up to my level. But it actually was. By the time I got to New York, it was 2001, and it was early 2001,
wow.
and I was. Kind of finding my feet, and had a job. I was waiting tables and going to auditions, but we were making some money at the restaurant, and it sort of took a little bit, not a back seat, but it wasn't driving the car. It was
right.
Sort of, and then after September 11th in New York, it was a very weird place to be, and it was a very weird, and I didn't quite know. I wasn't really having a lot of success, and so I said, you know what, I'm going to go home, and I went back to Dallas. And I had gotten a couple of little off-Broadway kids things, a little small things, but nothing of any note. And
so this is your reevaluation moment, whether you made a mistake in theater or you knew you still wanted to do it, but you were just going home to a different deal.
The only thing I could think of was I have to get out of here.
Okay, so it wasn't a career. You just knew New York, and you were not.
It became a moment of a few months of my life where I just said, I don't know what's happening right now, and the energy in the city was just such a weird thing, and I didn't have anything to really hold on to. Mm-hmm. We were trying to get an apartment, but that thing kind of fell through, and the whole thing sort of really, really seemed like it was time to make a little bit of a change, and ended up back in Dallas. Working, my friend opened a car and truck accessory store, and I said, oh, well, we could do this for a little while, and maybe I'll do some theater in Dallas. And that lasted all of 5 months. And I ended up back in Boston. A friend of mine said, hey, we're looking for a roommate. Do you want to go? And I hopped in the car and left.
Really?
And that is where
the theater
really took off. I ended up meeting.
It's interesting because Boston's not usually, and I'm proud obviously of Chicago. It's New York, Chicago, and LA from the artistic theater. It's not known.
Yeah, no, it was not. And what I ended up doing was not.
Are these college friends that left Emerson?
It was college friends and people who I'd met in college and who are still there, working at a restaurant that I'd worked out there. They still live there, and I had been speaking with this friend of mine who could tell I was not happy, and she said, well, you should come back. You should come, and we're looking for a roommate, and she was living with another friend of ours, and so I ended up there and sort of found a few auditions in Boston, really the small community theater level, but I still had friends from college there, and all of a sudden found a new sort of drive for performing, and I did a couple little shows in the area, and it was really cool. And then I met the artistic director of Speakeasy Theater in Boston, which is a little bitty theater, and we did a musical called Bat Boy the musical.
And that's our breakout moment?
It was the breakout moment, and I was the Bat Boy, I was the lead, and the writer of Bat Boy came and saw the show. It was the first one outside of New York City, and he came and saw the show, we became friends, and he said, hey, I'm doing this thing in New York, you should come audition for this kids show in New York. Went to audition for this kids show in New York, got the part, met a couple music directors, a couple other people working on the show. And he said, hey, the music director said, I'm doing this thing. You should come check it out. And it was the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee. And I met James Lapine and Bill Finn, and all of a sudden, my little community theater start in Boston, and this is now
pretty quick.
It was pretty quick. It was about a year. It was about
from Boston to back to New York.
The whole thing, getting to New York, getting from Boston to back in New York with this job was about 2 years, which was pretty amazing. And by now I'm 27, and so I'm 27, 6 years out of college, 7 years out of college, and
it's amazing in 6 years how New York matured, ready for you.
They
missed it the first go
I kept
around.
checking in with them, and they said, "Are you ready yet?" And they said, "Finally." They said,
It's amazing how that Mark Twain quote. He said, "At 12, I concluded my father was a fool. By 18, I was shocked what he learned in only 6 years."
Yeah.
So
yeah.
New York figured it out.
They
in 6
finally
years.
did.
Yeah.
And I think by that journey back in there, I was ready. I talk about this a lot with people who ask me about what do we do? What's your advice for a young actor? And I say, opportunity comes at its own pace, right? It comes at its own schedule, because sometimes your opportunity is not when you're 21 and you think you're ready. That may not be the right time for you. Sometimes it is. Our Chris Lee, who was our Lafayette Jefferson at the beginning, was 21. So he was a 21-year-old who the city was ready for him. But I clearly was not, and it was not till I was 28.
How did you then get to Hamilton and to the casting?
I found my way to New York, found some success, finally found a foot to stand on, and up and down, just like anything else. It was hard. Sometimes it was really great, sometimes it wasn't. And after, and now this is now 10 years later, a few Broadway shows that open and close, and I got married in there somewhere. I hung out with Billy Joe Armstrong and Green Day, and it was a great sort of exciting time. And I thought, as now 12 years later, 15 years later, I'm now almost into my 30s and married with a child, and my wife has a job working in a restaurant, a Tom Colicchio restaurant in New York City. Sugar Mama is what I called it, because I wasn't working at the time. My show had ended, and I thought to myself, maybe we're done here. Maybe I've done the thing that I came here to do, and it's time to move on. And I used to joke with people, and they're,
you're ready to get off the ramp.
I wasn't ready to get off the ramp, but I was. Maybe I'm taking a different road here. Like the Broadway road, and it's very exciting. And I did some things that a lot of people don't ever get to do. But she was working in the daytime. I was in If Then on Broadway, and she was working in the daytime. I was working at night. So we were like this. We had a child at the time, my first child, and we never saw each other. And I thought, well, maybe, they say this TV film thing, maybe that's something I could focus on. Not that it's easy. A lot of people like to say, well, why don't you go do TV? So, great idea. Let me just go do that.
I need a fifth city in my right.
Yeah. Let me go LA. Maybe that's the next thing.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe it's time to sort of think about what the next thing is. And I used to, people say, well, you go audition for this or that. And you said, yeah, this thing, I'm not really, the theater thing doesn't feel like it's the greatest thing for my family right now. Unless Lin-Manuel calls, unless Hamilton comes along. This is not, by then Hamilton started to be a thing. And then sure enough, I had auditioned one time a year and a half prior to this, and nothing happened. And then the thing came back around, and I auditioned for this part for Hamilton, and it was for Broadway or Chicago. And I auditioned, went in 4 times.
You go in 4 times for the character.
Yeah. So the first time was one time I went in, I knew the end, I knew how it was going to end because I'd done it before. Went in, said the whole thing, and said, thank you. Walked out the door, and they said, no, come back in for a second. Come. And then that's how that sort of, that's where it was different. That's where the road diverged. And I said, wait, this is a little different. They're a little bit more interested. And then 3 weeks later, after 4 auditions, I called my wife and I said, I think we're moving to Chicago.
What do you think is the difference between Chicago's theater scene? I know you're doing one thing here, but obviously your kids enrolled to school, etc. What's the difference between Chicago and New York when it comes to theater? What's your take?
The difference I feel like is, in New York, it's sort of I guess it is. It's kind of like a dog eat dog, right? It's not. There's so many companies. There's so many people. there's this huge commercial aspect of the Broadway world, and everybody wants to get on Broadway to be on, and so that it's not as much of a community, right? The first thing I heard of when I came into Chicago, and I'd already heard it a little bit out into the world, sort of out in the where I was in Boston and Dallas, that the Chicago community was such a tight-knit community, and everyone was a supportive, and it wasn't, in every
nobody stomped on your grave when you which is inevitable, you fall. No, I'm serious. I actually think it's a competitive community. On the other hand, it's very supportive.
Supportive and competitive, which drives great work.
Yes.
And I did a little reading with a theater company. A friend of mine, Jeremy McCarter, asked me to come and do this thing, and I met these people, and they were all the local actors and local people that had been doing it. And I just thought, this feels like a good place to be. It feels like a nice place to sort of.
Are you surprised at the take on Hamilton?
I mean,
has it blown?
It's not.
Because my daughter, my middle one, is now a sophomore in college. I've seen it 4 times. My wife's seen it 3 times. I've seen it once in New York, once here.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't.
It's really hard to.
Of all the characters that would have captured people's from the founding fathers, Hamilton.
Yeah, I always think about. I've read this book and I've looked at this book, and I think about sort of sitting on vacation and reading this book and thinking, what is it that this guy Lynn's brain found in these words that decided that this was the journey or the story that he wanted to tell, and I am still shocked. Even though I know what it is and I know how good it is, I am still shocked about how widespread the phenomenon is and how it has affected so many people and so many young people in such a profound way. And I
what itch do you think it's scratching? Because there's something it's scratching. It's not that the music isn't great, and not that the acting is. Why has this musical scratched? What is going on that it scratches?
Well, there's call it coincidence or
don't
yeah. But what was going on in our political climate, all over even prior to the election, it felt like there was an energy with young people movement and racial divides being blown away and walls being shattered, and that was the story that he was creating. And yes, it was this hip hop music which was reaching out into a different demographic, and all of a sudden making this historical. But there have been other musicals that try to do history in a cool way, so that wasn't a new thing. But whatever it is with the timing and the outreach beyond the racial divides and shattering stereotypes and the normal was something that people, I think, really needed to see and wanted to see. And then after, and that was already happening.
Right.
This is in 2015
right.
when it's getting started in early 2016. And then, after the fact, after the election, I think, with all of these, political feelings and all of this sort of, turmoil that are in people's heads, one way or the other, it became a new, something new, a new meaning, a new voice, and a new energy that was, I can't even begin to describe how the feeling I had on stage in October of 2016 was markedly different than my feeling on stage in November of 2016. It was like I was saying
the switch went.
It was like I was saying different words. I was saying the exact same thing, but in my brain, in my heart, it was different words. And I think that is another reason why there is this just unbelievable energy.
If you were sitting down with a group of friends drinking some wine and say, okay, we're going to do a musical, you know what? We're missing Hamilton. That's the guy. And I'm like, I don't get it.
I didn't know the story. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know there was all of these exciting. Who knows that there's these other historical figures that don't have also really intriguing lives. And I think that there is. I don't know. I can't even.
I think the only thing I can say is it's a different take. I mean, when I read the book, which is years ago when it first came out, is my only thing is there's a whole part of this is about a musical. about the rap and doing history that way and so on and so forth, and your guys' casting of different characters that don't fit the box, is that Hamilton's the one founding father that doesn't come out of the gentry or landed class, and that he is this anomaly, and that anomaly tells a different story than America than we normally hear.
I mean, I think
that's the only thing I can. That's
I think that's probably why he latched onto him, because it's a story of his family. His family came as immigrants. Whose family did. I don't know. I can't say whose family, but a lot of us
we got two of them
have a
right
very
here.
have a very similar story, and I think that's the one that jumps out and say, well, wow, let's tell that story, because that's also an important that the story of that coming out of nowhere.
Let me ask you a question. When the things started happening, I think Pence went to see it, the vice president.
Yeah.
And then you had somebody else in the audience, I think here in Chicago, react.
Yeah. Right after that. Right after that.
Were you guys surprised at how that was becoming?
No. I mean, I was very surprised at what happened here in this city, just because.
Just for awareness, I mean, you got basically somebody
just started yelling,
right.
Cursing and yelling right in the middle of Theodosia, which is this beautiful, soft lullaby. And two things happened. I kept thinking to myself, man, these tickets are hard to get. This is how you're gonna. This is how you're gonna use your shot. But the other thing was,
just to use that phrase.
Yeah. Hey, that was planned. But the other thing was, that there was this idea that what you feel is so important that you need to start yelling that here in front of while this thing is happening. And I think, I had a friend. Someone that I know in Texas who called me and said, "Oh man, that whole thing that you guys did with Mike Pence was terrible." And I said, "But it wasn't terrible." And so I think all of a sudden Hamilton got thrust into this political arena.
If I was to say, okay, it's coming to an end, give me the one play you want, the one character and play you want to, that's where I want to go next, or what. Looking back, I wish I was around when that show was happening, and I could play X.
Well, I have one story that is easy to tell is the Jersey Boys story. When that was starting, I wasn't as focused on the world, and I got in the door a lot of times, and I never quite broke that that the Frankie Valli. I thought, well, I'm a little guy, I'm a little fella, and that's sort of where, and I could never find the entrance ramp to that one, and so that was, I feel like it was one that maybe got away or maybe didn't quite, but it was, I don't have, it's hard to go back and say, wouldn't it have been great to be part of, I always look at Into the Woods as like a marker for me, when I saw that as a kid, I thought
that's the one
that looks like what I want to do with my life.
Do you ever read critics of theater and go, like, what are you? Come on, let go.
Sometimes I do.
Are you guys, as a community, you guys try to put it aside and say we're not going to read the reviews, we're not going to, or is that's BS?
I think that's actually a very, very personal decision from actor to actor, company to company. Most companies will say, let's keep all of that in a different world. Keep that outside of in these four walls. We do our work and we do our thing. Whatever you want to read, whatever you want to think is up to you, whether or not your psyche can take someone saying something good, bad, or otherwise about you. And I think it's a very personal, there's a conversation about that in every show I've ever been in.
Really?
I said, listen, we don't talk about that, good, bad, or otherwise.
Don't let it come in.
Don't let it come in here. We're going to do our thing, and I think it's probably a healthier way, because it is. Critics can, they all have belly buttons, and they're all different. Their opinions, the opinions vary.
Do you want to stay in theater? Or are you thinking about? Has there been this kind of the sucking sound of LA from the film and television? Or this is an incredible renaissance in TV going on right now.
Yeah.
I've never. When you think about everything that's happening from Netflix, all the series that are running, is that pulling you, or do you want to stay in this space?
It's a very good question as far as.
I'm just trying to get to the pillow talk between you and the missus.
Yeah, right, exactly. What are you guys talking about? And when you talk about
I have a thinking suspicion it's about Pulaski, and it's not about your career.
It's about. There's a few other things going on in the Cervantes household rather than, And it's funny. We actually had a conversation about this the other day about what comes next. What does come next.
Do you guys describe yourselves as Chicagoans now, or no? Be honest.
Yeah.
You do.
You know, I always talk about my experience in the show as a little bit different than a lot of the other people, because a lot of times these are younger people. They're coming in for a little while. They don't necessarily have family or friends here. That they build communities around themselves, but they feel a little bit more transient. I live here. You know,
I will say this. So I had a fellow actor from Chicago Fire who now says he's a Chicagoan, and it's amazing. I mean, I'm sure that happens in other cities where people come to do a show, either TV piece or theater, and then they stay. But it is amazing. I think Chicago has a unique sense of community and culture.
If I could choose my path, if I was able to say, this is what I want to do next, how, you know, somebody let me know where I go, let me know where I need to show up, you know, I would find one of these Chicago shows that are becoming amazing and long running and say, let's find a spot for me there and let Hamilton run its course, and then I get to stay.
One of the things I loved about it, I remember we went opening night here in Chicago, Amy and I and Alana went, and there was this desire we're going to make permanent amount of free tickets for CPS students, Chicago Public School students. You and I have seen each other at hospitals. You've been back. Where's the culture of giving back? That you don't have that in every theater or every visit. Where's that coming from?
You know, I don't know. I'm not sure where it comes from, as far as like in general. But I know for me, and for the Jeffrey and the Hamilton folks, it becomes something that is, as we are doing so commercially well, it's doing so well. It doesn't feel like there's any other thing we can do. You know, it feels like that has to be part of what Hamilton does. And so beyond what Jeffrey and Lynn and everybody have decided they want to do with the Edge of Ham and with getting out of the community and getting, not only kids to see the show, but to immerse themselves in creation and creativity and artistic, letting their artistic voices be heard. We, as the cast members, for some reason, have decided that and not in myself included, but for my personal causes, but everyone has found themselves wanting to be part of, donation performances and making.
No, you guys, it's an amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's great Steppenwolf. But you guys have this. Not that others don't, but it's an amazing, consistent culture.
Yeah.
Now you have done. And this is your personal life, so you can say you don't want to talk about it. But I know I first met you with David and Susan Axelrod at the Cure dinner, and you've spent a lot of time on the issue of epilepsy and research.
Yeah. As Hamilton came into my life, and it's I've told this story. It's such a crazy story that happened. The two roads were converging at the same time. Hamilton came into my life, and we also found out that my daughter had epilepsy. So as I found out we were coming to Chicago, my wife had worked with David and Susan Axelrod on their fundraisers in New York with her restaurant.
Oh, I see. So that's where
she knew of Cure already. And so when we're coming to New York, her first call was to her contact at Cure. And so we got here and, terrified, just absolutely terrified of A, just changing our life, moving to a new city, but B, dealing with my daughter, who is now, at this point, 7-9 months old and having seizures, and we don't know what that means. We don't know how that. And so we come to Chicago, and Cure and the folks at Cure and Susan and David wrapped their arms around us and said, we got you here. And so that's where that relationship began. And so
that's another road. I mean, obviously, Dave and Susan are good friends, but when I was a congressman, one of the first things they did was get Cure research from NIH when it was like a couple $100,000.
Yeah. And we very, very quickly learned that the epilepsy world needs a lot of help. They need a lot of.
You and your wife's speech at the dinner, and I give you both. I've got to be honest, her particularly.
Yeah. No.
A lot of strength. A lot of perseverance, and it was it's incredible because to get up there and then be honest about what's happening in your family, and I give her a lot of credit, not just persevering, but then wanting to make a difference with this.
Yeah, I always say this a lot about our own personal journey is my daughter, she's got infantile spasms, which is a pretty severe and that condition is resistant to a lot of treatments. It's very hard to find something that works well without just the side effects. And so what we say is we may not be able to do so much for her, You know, we're trying everything we can, but our, you know, success rate and what we can actually achieve in her life, it may be limited. But if we raise our voices and do everything we can, at some point, some parents will not have to go through what we have to go through. And that at some point with, you know, awareness and research dollars, that there will be better treatments. And some parent who is told infantile spasms in the near future, they will say, oh, here's how we stop that. Here's how we fix that. And not what we were told, which was, let's try this. You know, and I think that's where my use of the Hamilton soapbox is important. And as my wife, who has all of a sudden become
if I'm in a foxhole, she's
Listen,
like number one on the card, man. I'm sorry. If you have another foxhole,
there's another one right down the road you can get into.
I'm going with Mrs. Man.
She has become a pharmacist, an activist, a doctor, a nurse, everything. You know, 2.5 years ago, that was just a foreign world.
How'd you guys meet?
I was an actor in New York City, and her friend Jeff.
Don't tell me it's a restaurant. She's a
no. I was doing a little kid show, and I was playing a 7-year-old kid, and her roommate was the dog. I was Henry and Mudge, and he said, "Oh, you should meet my roommate. She's gonna come." And I met her, and I said, "All right, cool." And then so we went on a couple dates, and that's where it started. And so I actually just saw him the other day, and you know, gave him a high five, thanked him again for the intro, and then we were both actors at the time in New York City. And as my career kind of began to form, she took a real job. Yeah. And thank God she did.
She was a breadwinner in the family. Let's not forget that, brother.
I was happy to, whenever I wasn't working, I was happy to keep hot dinner on the table and keep the house clean. And it was a life I loved.
So now that you're a young family here, you know, there's a thing called Night Out in the Parks. And you can go to any parks in our city. You can go on the Park District website, and there's Shakespeare in the park. They do it. We have Joffrey, and it's free. It's hard, you know, it's expensive for families to go see. And so we bring culture all over the city. It's all you have to have is a lawn chair or a blanket, and it's free. And so for your family, if you ever get a free night,
yes, well,
it's called Night Out in the Parks, and you can go check it out in like a neighborhood enough.
Yeah. I listen. It's something that we are very passionate about in the next year. To, you know, as we're figuring out what our life with Adelaide is, my daughter, and the Hamilton thing. It never will calm, but it sort of gets a little that we make sure we take advantage of all of these cool things, because we don't consider ourselves tourists anymore. Yeah. So we don't want to be the locals that don't do anything. Anything, right? Or, you know, if I might just say a quick word about our home here in Chicago and what we want to do in our home here with our daughter and the community that we found. You know, one of the things that I have to say is we have been contacted by so many people locally, a lot of local people about our situation with her, and it's so comforting to know that there are people who are listening, people who are trying to be involved. I don't know, this Fairgrounds, Michael Schultz at Fairgrounds created a brand of coffee called Adelaide's Blend.
I did not know that.
And so he sells it at his stores,
right?
And so at proceeds, 20% goes to Cure. And the Mariano's people said we want in, and so they sell it at Mariano's. You know, so they've taken up our torch and are shining it out into the world. And I think we have to, I want to make sure that people know that how grateful we are that the community has stepped in and has said that they want to be part of it, and all the folks at Cure, you know, the Axelrods and all the staff and everything that have taken us in.
That's why I do. You're kind of putting on a spotlight. I do think Chicago has whatever community you're a part of, you end up having a feeling of a community and welcomed into the family.
Yeah.
And I think it's unique. I mean, not that there aren't special characteristics to New York or to Boston. Dallas is not a city; it's just a sprawl. Sorry about that. But there is a unique sense of and welcoming people into a community.
You know, that's the one thing about the city that we love, is that we live in the city, but we don't feel like we're living in a big
oppressive.
Well, not oppressive, but it's like that without a face, without a personality. You know, it feels like we're in a place that has a lot of character and a lot of, you know, New York. It's just New York. It's a big, messy, you know, crowded place.
Well, welcome home.
Yeah, thank you. We'll take it.
All right, we're gonna prove your Chicago-ness here.
Okay.
Are you ready?
All right.
Fast. Cubs or Sox?
It's got to be Cubs. I mean, do I get a choice? I mean, if I
just gave you one.
well, Texas Rangers, but you know,
Cubs or Sox?
As a time.
Okay. A second, thick or thin pizza?
Thin.
Okay. Lake or river?
Lake.
Okay. The Hancock Building, or what we refer to as in the old days, the Sears Building?
I know what the Sears Building is because when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But the Hancock, I've been to the Hancock, and that's pretty slick. That's pretty slick building.
Okay. 12-inch or 16-inch softball?
I'm not allowed to play softball.
You're not.
My wife, the Hamilton has a team, and I have to, if I go out.
Pathetic?
No, the problem is I like to think I'm very, very good. But
you try to kick the softball?
No, I have to. Well, listen.
Who do you guys play?
Well, we play.
Do you play Steppenwolf or Goodman? Or?
Listen.
Is there a theater league?
Is there a theater league?
I don't know.
If anyone's listening, let's get one going.
There's not a mayoral league, so
right. Come on. No, we play. If I play, I have to. I wear the mask and I have to wear my armor because the last thing I need to do is take a softball to the eyeball and have to be out of the show for. But I've heard this. I've never played the 16-inch.
You got to
softball.
go. Yeah. Well, I may send one over. That's a Chicago deal, man. It needs both. Yeah. For our meaty hands.
I've heard all about this, and I think I saw what they were playing. My son is on T-ball over in Hamlin Park, and I was a coach. Coach Miguel was out there with him, and I saw these guys playing with this big softball, and they were just scooping it up with their hands. I thought,
are we an overbearing father here?
Yeah. It's
Okay, I'm gonna give you, since I'm on the other side of this equation. Just be present. Don't be a drone or a helicopter.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out where that line is.
Yeah, I want to sort of be as involved as I can, especially as he is getting older and sort of understanding the needs of our daughter.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that he gets enough.
Right.
But not,
Exactly.
not like we don't, hold it with too strong a grip. He still could be his own kid.
Miguel, welcome home.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Miguel.
You've been listening to Chicago Stories with Mayor Emanuel. You can subscribe and leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tweet your guest ideas using #ShyStories. Thanks for listening.